Well, hello, everybody. I am Trooper Sanders, the CEO of Benefits Data Trust. We are a nonprofit that is working to make our social safety net and the public benefits that millions of Americans rely on to buy food, to access healthcare, to go to college and get broadband and the other essential things in their life. We are working to make it more effective, more efficient, and more dignified so that people can get the help they need and move on with their lives in a healthier and more economically secure way. One of the issues that the world seems to be dealing with these days is artificial intelligence. It has been a concept that has been around for decades. It has been with us for at least a decade or more. And most recently, particularly with the evolution of generative AI and tools such as ChatGPT, it has entered the public consciousness and public square in a very profound way. I'm sure that many of you who run and manage human services programs and are at the coalface of ensuring that people get the help they need are wondering, what does AI mean for you? What does it mean for your programs? How should you make decisions to ensure that these tools give you their best and mitigate their worst? BDT will be holding a series of conversations with national experts on artificial intelligence in the coming weeks, and we hope that this will help inform your thinking, sharpen how you approach AI, and most importantly, make sure that you are more comfortable grappling with all of these issues, and know that whether you studied engineering or computer science or social work in English, that everyone in a position of responsibility and working with people have a seat at the table to decide our future with AI. Today, I am pleased to be joined by an extraordinary national leader on artificial intelligence, Afua Bruce. I not only got to know her work by seeing her speak, but her amazing book, The Tech That Comes Next, has made me seem smarter on AI than I probably am. And welcome, Afua.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this conversation today.
Wonderful. I should also add that Afua is a graduate of the University of Michigan, as am I. And of course, anytime Michigan people get together, one of us has to be obnoxious and say, "Go Blue." So I will.
Go Blue from both of us then.
Well, Afua, let's start. So to begin with, how do you define artificial intelligence?
Absolutely. When I think of artificial intelligence, I think of algorithms processing data to, process data to predict next steps or to produce new content. Traditional AI specifically uses computer algorithms to process data to do things like analyses or predictions. If you think of your Netflix queue or your sort of suggested other items to buy on Amazon or other large services, those are using AI to help serve you up the predictions in line with what your past behavior has been, the past data you've driven, past data you have generated indicates that you might like. Generative AI, which, as you mentioned, Trooper, has been getting a lot of attention since ChatGPT's public product launch last year. Generative AI uses algorithms to generate content like text or images. Regardless of what type of AI you're talking about, though, common traits include analyzing large volumes of data to be analyzed and being used to train the algorithms on. Another common trait is using statistical analysis to weight algorithms and to help generate the predictions.
So what excites you most about AI and what it might do for society?
I am, generally excited about what AI has to offer. I'm a computer engineer by training. I started my career off as a software engineer, writing lots of code. So seeing the technology advance to the state that it's in now is really exciting. I think we've seen AI be used in a variety of different ways, whether it is As I mentioned, the algorithms that help simplify my life, or at least help me use some of my free time or time I should be doing other things a bit more efficiently, or to enjoy that more, but also to do things such as to help businesses operate more efficiently, to look at different ways of providing credit scoring, for example, that are more inclusive, to help analyze data and statistics at different universities to ensure that we have more students graduating, or a host of other applications crossing the medical fields, the educational fields, and various technology fields. I think there's a lot of promise for AI largely, but also AI in the ways that it can really be used to positively impact lives.
Now, what concerns you most about AI and what the detrimental effects it might have?
It is hard for me to pick one thing that concerns me most about AI when we think about AI's impact on society, because AI has the ability to really take any sort of biases or stereotypes that we have in society, and stereotypes that we all hold as people, and encode them into different software programs that can then operate at speed and at scale. The amount of harm that can be done by poorly designed AI systems is quite significant and can be quite detrimental. There is a lot of work from a lot of various scholars in this place. Joy Buolamwini and her work on facial recognition, I think of Safia Noble and Ruha Benjamin, Timnit Gebru, a lot of people who have studied this field for many, many years and have identified the intersection of what is possible with technology, what is possible with AI specifically, and the harms that it can have specifically on traditionally or historically marginalized communities, particularly people of color and women. And so I think the potential of AI to operate at scale to prevent people from getting access to programs that they are already legally entitled to prevent people from being considered for jobs or other benefits, is pretty damaging.
So in your book, The Tech That Comes Next, you talk about intentionally designing technology and particularly factoring in the needs of traditionally excluded and marginalized communities. A lot of our audience are running human service agencies and others that in the coming years will be making pretty big budget decisions around not only whether to use AI or not, but what to procure, what to ask the marketplace to respond to. How should they be thinking about the intentionality around AI's design in making their decisions?
Absolutely. The intentionality and specificity around AI design is incredibly important. In the book, The Tech That Comes Next, my co-author, Amy Sample Ward, and I cite a now many years old example of automatic faucets. And when automatic faucets, you go to the bathroom, you put your hands under the sensor and water should come out. Well, when they were first designed and when they were first rolled out, that only worked for people with light skin. It did not work for dark skin. And now this example to me is really important because it really highlights that the technological harm here wasn't intentional or malicious necessarily. But I don't think that any of the engineers or designers in that process said, it would be great if we only had faucets that worked for a small subset of the population. But it really does highlight, without the intentionality in the design process, it is very easy to extend technological harms onto groups of people. So it's really important to have a diversity of people involved with every aspect of the technology process. So every aspect, as you're thinking about AI, from the design, the development, the testing, and deployment process, matters. And when I say diversity, I do mean some of the elements that we traditionally associate with diversity, such as race and gender and ethnicity, for example. But I also mean it in terms of other dimensions, right? Especially knowledge of technology. We really have to get away from the idea that technology, generally, and certainly AI specifically, is something magical that only a few select people can weigh in on. I was in conversation with some industry executives a couple of months ago, and one of them made the comment, well, I know there's a lot of ethical issues with AI, but we'll leave that to the technology experts to figure out. And I said, you can't absolve yourself from this conversation. It's really crucial that we recognize that both technologists and non-technologists need to have a seat at this table. That critical subject matter insight, that critical process insight, that critical understanding of who the communities affected are, that critical understanding of what benefits look like, how they should be administered, how people are actually affected, is crucial to the design and evaluation of any and every AI system.
So, when you're thinking about making decisions around these programs, I could imagine the head of a human service agency would immediately call their chief technology officer or chief information officer, their procurement head, and huddle and figure out what to do. Say a little bit more about how leaders in these agencies should design the table, who should be around it, and what would you say to people who don't come from a technical background of why they should feel a sense of belonging and power at that table?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, it's important to have both technologists and non-technologists at the table. So yes, absolutely, for conversations about AI, certainly any AI system that you're going to develop or procure, or any general IT system where a vendor has added AI into the offering, regardless of whether or not you asked for it, have your senior technical folks at the table, the CIO at the table. It's really important to have the procurement folks at the table as well, so people understand how you're making these decisions, what to procure, what not to procure. It's also really important to have subject matter experts about the different programs that you are administering at that table as well. Again, the technology should be designed and should be developed and deployed in service of your organization's mission and in service of both the people you serve and the staff at your agency as well. So it's really important to have the subject matter experts in those processes at the table so they can speak to whether or not the solutions are actually answering the questions that need to be asked and actually having the impact that needs to be had. I think it's really important for leaders in this space to really focus on the agency mission, right? And for most human service agencies, it's delivering services most efficiently and with care to those qualifying for benefits. AI can really help address different parts of the process, help with fraud detection, for example, and helping to direct resources to where there's likely a problem as opposed to a more generalized sample of anyone, anywhere. So I think that's one way to think about AI as ways of helping. But when you can really focus on the agency mission, you can really think about what you are actually solving for, and therefore what needs to be emphasized.
So in your book that very much focused on the social sector, it perhaps naturally leads to a blending of what I like to think of as code and prose. So the AI and the technical with the human side, with the systems and the people who are driving those forward. There is a disturbing case out of Australia where they automated some of their fraud detection in their social security system, and a 1,000-page government report that came out showed the devastating consequences of when you just automate and cut the human out. Leaders of human service agencies are understaffed, their budgets are stretched. There's so many pressures to find a way to do more with less. And perhaps they might see AI and automation as one of those shortcuts to take. What would you say about how to think about blending the technical and the human and making sure there's a broader whole?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I really like how you phrase that, blending the code and prose. I might take that and use that in future discussions. Another way that I think technologists, certainly people who operate at this intersection, also describe it, is that it's important to have a human in the loop. And so really making sure that you're designing systems with humans in the loop. Back to my earlier point, this technology is not magical. It is not someone standing to the side with a magical wand or some amazing fairy dust that someone has that just in a second can actually replace humans immediately. So especially as you're making decisions with AI, it is important to have humans in the loop. I think really evaluating any type of AI system you have, again, back to that agency mission, what are you solving for? But also making sure that you're using these systems not as ways to automatically exclude people from services, exclude people or prevent people from getting access to benefits. The stakes are too high, and it's really important to have a human in the loop there. While fraud detection systems and others can be designed, and I think those are potentials for some good use cases. The example that you cite in Australia is one that makes it clear that it's important to have humans in the loop. It's why when you have these discussions, as I mentioned earlier, you want to have your subject matter experts at the table. You want to have your program leaders at the table so they can do the human check of, does this actually make sense? Is this actually in line with the goals that we have for the program? Another case where this could go wrong, for example, are where correlation and causation could be mixed up by a computer system, by an algorithm. For example, if you are administering let's say healthcare benefits, and you're looking for fraud by looking at people who are abusing the system, someone could, depending on how the system is designed, someone could trigger that system simply because they're using a large number of services. It could not be that they're taking advantage of the system. It could just be that given their station in life, given different socioeconomic factors, other benefit programs they qualify for, they're just heavy users of the program. That doesn't necessitate that it is fraud. And so making sure that you've got a human in the loop will help to really check those and not to let any algorithms that were designed overtake and prevent people from getting benefits that they're legally entitled to.
Wonderful. And what is the one question that you would advise a leader of a human service agency to ask in every meeting where AI comes up or when a decision comes to their desk?
I don't know that I can give you one question, but I might give you a suite of questions to ask. And so I think with that, the first thing that I would encourage leaders to ask is, what are we solving for here? Making sure that people are really clear as to what you are actually solving for. First of all, especially right now, we are in a big hype cycle around AI. It can be tempting to bring in AI with any problem you have, regardless of whether or not you actually even need a technology solution at all. And so really asking people, what are we solving for here? Then I think the next set of questions to ask is, who is harmed if this works and who is harmed if this fails? There's some research recently actually out of the University of Michigan, go blue again, that examined the efficiency of AI systems when it comes to detecting cancer. I think it was specifically breast cancer in the survey, and showed that the most technically efficient implementation of that AI system had a very small number of the false positives and false negatives overall. However, when you looked at the overall breakdown, because some of the underlying data sets were skewed and what was represented in that underlying data sets, the most efficient, technically efficient perhaps, implementation of that AI system actually led to a lot of false positives for women of color. And so by changing the level of efficiency in that system and actually decreasing it slightly, you actually had fewer people get false negatives, which when you're looking in your overall mission is to detect cancer earlier, that's actually what you want. Now, you wouldn't want to go so far that everyone is just suddenly getting a false result because then no one believes in the system, but seeing where that technical efficiency needs to sit so that your overall system efficiency can actually be higher is really important. So really asking, you as a leader to think through who is actually being harmed by this if it works, who is harmed if this fails, and what are we actually solving for, I think are the questions to be asking.
Wonderful. And final question, besides your book, which is amazing, what is the one resource, a book, a podcast, someone's literature, et cetera, that you would recommend that our audience check out to get their heads around AI?
There are many, many books on this topic and many people who have been studying the space for a while. I cited some of them a little earlier in our conversation today. I'm currently reading Meredith Broussard's book, More Than a Glitch. It came out earlier this year, and it's about confronting race, gender, and ability bias in tech. I think the book description says something about it, examining the question of what if racism, sexism, and ableism aren't just bugs and mostly functional machinery? What if they're encoded into the system itself? And so again, it really gets back to that question of why it's important to intentionally design for all people who will be interacting with or be touched by the programs that you're developing, the code that you're running, that you're rolling out, is really thinking about what that system looks like and how to address it.
Wonderful. Afua Bruce, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.